Thomas Hobbes, one of the most influential English philosophers of the 17th century, fundamentally shaped the course of modern political thought. His most famous work, Leviathan, laid the groundwork for social contract theory and remains a cornerstone of political philosophy. Born prematurely in 1588, Hobbes famously claimed that his mother brought forth twins, myself and fear, as she was terrified by the approaching Spanish Armada. This theme of fear, as a primary human motivator, would become a central pillar of his philosophical system. Hobbes received his education at Magdalen Hall, Oxford, where he grew critical of the prevailing scholastic traditions. His intellectual development was profoundly shaped by his travels across Europe, where he served as a tutor to the powerful Cavendish family. During these journeys, he met and was greatly influenced by the scientific advancements of his time, including the work of Galileo Galilei. The chaos and brutal violence of the English Civil War provided the immediate, terrifying backdrop for his political theories. Witnessing the collapse of social order firsthand, Hobbes became convinced of the need for an absolute, undivided sovereign power. To escape the turmoil, he spent over a decade in exile in Paris, where he refined his philosophical ideas and wrote Leviathan. At the heart of Hobbes's philosophy is his conception of the state of nature, the hypothetical condition of humanity without government. In this state, he argued, all individuals are fundamentally equal in their capacity to harm one another. This equality, combined with a scarcity of resources, leads to a perpetual state of conflict. Hobbes famously described this condition as a war of every man against every man, bellum omnium contra omnes. Life, in the state of nature, he wrote, is arbitrary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. There's no room for industry, culture, or knowledge because the future is uncertain and survival is the only concern. The primary drivers of human action in this state are competition for gain, diffidence for safety, and glory for reputation. To escape this horrific existence, rational individuals are motivated by the fear of death and the desire for a more comfortable life. This leads them to seek peace through a social contract, an agreement to relinquish some of their natural freedoms. In this contract, each person agrees to give up their right of governing themselves to a central authority. This authority, the Leviathan or sovereign, is created by the people, but is not a party to the contract itself. The sovereign's power is therefore absolute, indivisible, and unquestionable. Hobbes visualized this in the famous frontispiece of his book, showing a giant monarch whose body is composed of thousands of tiny citizens. The sword represents the sovereign's control over civil and military power. The crozier symbolizes authority over religious and ecclesiastical matters, ensuring no rival power center can emerge. For Hobbes, the sovereign could be a monarch, an aristocracy, or a democracy, though he personally favored monarchy for its decisiveness. The primary duty of the sovereign is to maintain peace and enforce the law, thereby protecting the lives of the subjects. Subjects, in turn, have an absolute duty to obey the sovereign's commands. The only right that individuals retain is the right to self-preservation. If the sovereign threatens to kill a subject, that subject is freed from their obligation of obedience and may resist. Similarly, if the sovereign fails to provide security and the Commonwealth dissolves back into civil war, the contract is void. Hobbes's philosophy was deeply materialist. He believed that everything in the universe, including the human mind, was matter in motion. He rejected the idea of a non-physical soul or mind, arguing that all thought was a product of physical processes in the brain. This led him to a deterministic view of human action, where free will is simply the last appetite or aversion in the process of deliberation. His views were highly controversial, earning him accusations of atheism and heresy from his contemporaries. Despite the controversy, Hobbes's rigorous, secular argument for political authority was a radical departure from the divine right of kings. He did not argue that rulers were chosen by God, but that their authority was a rational construction created by the people to serve their own interests. His work laid the essential groundwork for the liberal tradition, even though he himself was not a liberal. Later thinkers like John Locke would adopt his social contract framework, but argue for a government with limited powers and a right to revolution. Hobbes' stark realism about power and human nature has also made him a foundational figure in the field of international relations. Nations, in the international arena, exist in a state of nature, constantly vying for power and security. Thomas Hobbes' legacy is that of a brilliant, if unsettling, thinker who dared to look into the abyss of human nature and political chaos. He constructed a powerful, logical system designed to keep that abyss at bay through the sheer force of a unified, sovereign will. His philosophy serves as a timeless and sobering reminder of the fragility of peace and the profound price of security. The sovereign's power must be absolute to prevent the descent back into the war of all against all. Any division of power, such as separating legislative, executive, and judicial functions, was seen by Hobbes as a weakness. He believed such divisions would only create factions and lead to paralysis or civil war. Liberty, for Hobbes, was not freedom from law, but freedom within the law. It is the silence of the law, where the sovereign has not prescribed a rule. The subject is free to act as they will. This concept of negative liberty was a significant contribution to political thought. Hobbes' materialism extended to his view of religion, which he believed must be subordinate to the state. A national church, controlled by the sovereign, was necessary to prevent religious disputes from causing civil unrest. Private belief was permissible, but public worship and doctrine had to be uniform and state-controlled. He argued that human beings are complex machines, their actions determined by the mechanical push and pull of appetites and aversions. Desire is motion towards an object, while aversion is motion away from it. This mechanistic psychology was revolutionary and stripped human nature of its divine or mystical elements. Even in his old age, Hobbes continued to write, translating Homer's Iliad and Odyssey into English. His intellectual vigor remained, though his philosophical works were forbidden from being published in England for a time. Hobbes' pessimistic view of human nature is often contrasted with the more optimistic outlook of thinkers like Rousseau. While controversial, his analysis of power, fear, and the state remains profoundly relevant in contemporary political debates. He forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the price of peace and the nature of authority. The Leviathan is not just a monster, but a necessary artifice, a mortal god created by humans to save themselves from their own nature. His logic is relentless, moving from one proposition to the next with the certainty of a geometric proof. This deductive method was a deliberate attempt to make political philosophy as certain as science. The sovereign embodies the will of all, and to disobey the sovereign is to contradict one's own will. Justice, in Hobbes' system, is simply the keeping of covenants, and there can be no injustice where there is no sovereign to enforce them. In the state of nature, with no covenants, nothing can be unjust. This position shocked many, as it seemed to erase the concept of natural, God-given morality. Hobbes argued that words like good and evil are subjective, referring only to our personal appetites and aversions. Only the sovereign's law can provide an objective standard for public action. His analysis of language is also key. He believed that clear definitions were essential to avoid philosophical and political conflict. Much of the strife of the Civil War, he thought, came from misusing words like liberty and justice. He sought to create a political science that was immune to ambiguity and emotional rhetoric. The power of the Leviathan must extend to controlling universities and what is taught within them. This was to prevent the spread of seditious doctrines that could undermine the sovereign's authority. Hobbes' state is fundamentally a machine for survival, prioritizing order over all other virtues. He was a deeply polarizing figure, admired by some for his intellectual honesty and reviled by others for his authoritarian conclusions. His work challenges the comfortable assumptions we might have about democracy, freedom, and human goodness. He argued that the fear of punishment is the only reliable way to make people keep their promises. Without the terror of some power, covenants are merely words, with no strength to secure a man at all. This stark view separates him from classical philosophers who believed in virtue as the basis of the state. For Hobbes, the state is not there to make men virtuous, but simply to keep them from killing each other. His writing is a powerful antidote to political idealism, a cold bath of realism. He lived to the ripe age of 91, a testament to a life of caution and intellectual rigor. Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan remains one of the most ambitious and formidable arguments in the history of ideas. It is a book born of fear, crafted by logic, and dedicated to the proposition that peace is the ultimate political good. The sovereign is the soul of the Leviathan, giving life and motion to the entire Commonwealth. Without this soul, the body is but a dead carcass, prone to decay and dissolution. This powerful metaphor emphasizes the total dependence of society on its governing power. Hobbes' theory allows for no legitimate rebellion, as the sovereign holds the people's own authority. To rebel against the sovereign is to rebel against oneself, an act of ultimate irrationality. His work was a direct response to the religious justifications for rebellion popular during the Reformation and English Civil War. He sought to make the foundations of government immune to theological disputes. The sovereign is the final interpreter of Scripture. Enduring religion cannot be used as a pretext for war. This was perhaps his most audacious claim in a deeply religious age. Hobbes' influence can be seen in the modern emphasis on state sovereignty as the organizing principle of world politics. His intellectual courage and the sheer force of his logic continue to command respect and provoke debate. Whether one agrees with him or not, Thomas Hobbes is an essential voice in the long conversation about power, society, and human nature.